He was trying to compete with Usain Bolt.
So, like...
Go ahead, sir. Come over here.
So the agreed discussion is going to be the disqualification of Christ's divinity according to your argument that God cannot be caused. And then we're also going to discuss on how you believe your refutation of composition is going to be sufficient in the deniability of the traditional Sunni profile of what God is. So it's going to be a timed discussion, and I'm going to wait for 2 Christian cameramen to be present, and we're going to...
I don't have time for you. I'm sorry, with all due respect. You're not important. With all due respect, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Who do you think you're talking to, brother?
Okay, then.
Okay, listen, if you want to ask me a question, I can answer you. If you don't want to, I'm not here. Who are you? You're nothing. You're nobody. You're not important to me. So if you're going to say, I'm going to wait for 2 Christians, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, who the hell are you, man?
Exactly are you opposed?
Yeah. Anyway, have you got a question?
Yeah.
What's your question? What's your question? No,
Do
what's your question?
you believe that through natural theology we can come to the conclusion of your doctrine of what you consider Allah?
Okay, so some aspect of it, not all of it. So for example, through natural theology, from first principles, you can, I think, take four or five at most attributes of God and probably come to them logically. But the other ones, like for example, compassion and love and mercy and so on, or that's the same thing really, compassion and special compassion, or any type of special compassion or non-special compassion, Rahman or Rahim, any of that stuff, it requires the nas, requires some kind of a text.
Okay, so then can I offset this in saying, for example, is this first principle, or rather this first principle, is its first action going to be in creation? Do you believe in a first act?
Do I believe in a first act, or does Islam say that there's a first act?
I'm asking you, and of course your position is going to reflect for whatever tradition.
No, I think, no, to be honest with you, Islam has different opinion on that.
But I'm asking you, I'm not asking...
So
I'm going to say that your position is going to reflect
So my position is that there doesn't need to be one. I believe that textually, from an Islamic perspective, there's more reason to believe that there was a first act.
Okay, so you agree that Allah is the first act?
Yeah.
But don't talk in what if, some people affirm this. Don't say what if, some people affirm this, some people don't. Say what you believe. This is your tradition.
My belief is I'm not important.
Okay,
I'm just like you, we're both not important.
Yeah, but you're representing a tradition.
No, I'm not important.
Wait, so you said that you won't discuss on me in a formal discussion because I'm not important, but you two
No, I'm not important.
Are not important.
I'm not important.
Tracing clout?
No, I'm not important.
Okay.
So I'm telling you from an Islamic perspective, I'm not an authority. Like when it comes to theology, I'm not an authority. When it comes to like positions on this matter, all I can do is regurgitate and tell you what scholars of the past have said.
And what do you affirm?
So for example, if you're saying first act, first creation, they create first thing.
Yeah.
Like a creation ex nihilo, is that what you're talking about? Yeah, so in Islam, there are 2 opinions. Yeah. One opinion is that, which is the majority opinion, is that yes, there is creation ex nihilo.
And do you agree with that?
Yeah, I favor that opinion, but I don't say necessarily that that's the only opinion. So there's another opinion, which is the opinion of Ibn Taymiyyah, for example, who believes in something called hawadith la awwala laha. So he believes in a chain of things that happen. God can perpetually create into the past. I can see that that's a logical possibility.
Okay.
And even a textual one to some extent, but I'm not saying that I agree with that.
So you're essentially saying that someone who denies the first act is still in the body of Islam, that you personally hold to this position. Okay, so then the composition argument that firstly, you deny divine simplicity, that all of the attributes within God is identical to himself.
Sure.
Therefore, all of Allah's attributes are going to be less than the whole itself. If therefore he is composite, because he's composed of things that are less than the whole itself. Even though Ibn Taymiyyah wants to say, for example, that either these are abstract descriptors or something that
he doesn't say that. He doesn't say that.
Well, he says that it's inseparable from the whole itself, and you
take
away.
What does?
Yeah, that his attributes are inseparable from the whole. But I allowed you to speak, so if you want to say that I'm mischaracterizing his position after the time of me speaking, that's absolutely fine.
Just get to the point, man. Stop talking. Sorry, just go ahead. You are speaking. You are speaking. Just talk. You're wasting my time. Just get there.
I'll get there. And this is why I said we should have a timed discussion and not one where you interrupt me and I interrupt you.
Just get to the point.
The point is that
what's the question?
Because you said I have to load this in a question, I have to go through a line of premises.
Okay,
and ask the
you're boring everyone around you. Ask the question, please.
No, he's not.
No, it's boring. It's boring. You ran physically, bro. You ran physically. You actually ran physically. You ran physically, bro.
I am very still. I very much want to talk to you.
Sure.
And in fact, I propose that we have a time discussion.
All right. Does someone want to time it? 1 minute. 1 minute.
Okay. 1 minute. 1 minute.
Does someone do that?
And the agreed discussion, for the sake of the camera, is firstly your issue or contention with Christianity that Christ cannot be God because he has a cause. And then my argument to you is going to be that your God cannot be the God of natural theology because you reject divine simplicity, therefore implying that your God is composite and the first act is going to be composing himself.
Do you accept the fact that in Christianity there are different views on divine simplicity?
Yeah, and that's kufar.
No, hold on. Do you accept the fact that in... You don't accept that?
I don't grant that these people are Christian.
Oh, okay. So what strand of Christianity do you follow?
Eastern Orthodoxy.
Okay, so is Eastern Orthodoxy unanimous in its proclamation of divine simplicity?
Yeah, like,
so dogma.
So like either like, for example, St. Maximus wants to affirm absolute divine simplicity, or some of the Cappadocians want to follow the divine simplicity. But at least we're going to have to affirm divine simplicity. Now you just are simply appealing, and I noticed this in your rhetoric. Oh, there are. We
haven't started the time yet, by the way.
There are some people.
Oh, you're going to do 1 minute, 1 minute. Do you want to do 1 minute, 1 minute?
Of course, but you asked me a question. I'm trying to give a sufficient.
You can
answer.
have a minute. Go ahead. 1 minute starts now. Go.
Wait, no, hold on. You said something untimed, so I want to say something untimed.
Go ahead.
So I want to make this very clear. Do not appeal to people I do not agree are Christian. You can say, oh, these people claim Christianity.
Protestants are not Christians.
I would say that there is a second-fold term that we could use. For example, there is a colloquial term that we can call these people Christian because they attempt to follow the faith of Christ, but they don't actually follow
Catholics?
Legitimate. Well, no, of course, they try to, but they're not.
Okay, can I ask you a question then? On a serious, because you seem to be reading on these issues and whatever, yeah? So, okay, divine simplicity, right? Now, let's say, for example, let's look at Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas.
I don't agree with Thomas Aquinas.
No, but he believes in divine simplicity, and he's one of.
But like,
I understand.
Do I take that he's going to come to the conclusion of divine simplicity?
I haven't asked you a question.
Okay, so the question is going to be on an individual I don't care about. Great.
Okay, no problem. But what I'm saying is that he divided the attributes of God into univocal, equivocal, and analogy. Do you accept that distinction or not?
I mean, in terms of, for example, his understanding of Scripture when it says, for example, like God.
Do you understand these distinctions? Do you understand this or not?
Yeah, but like, I want you to argue why I should take Thomas Aquinas as a source.
No, I'm not. That wasn't my question.
Yeah.
My question was not that.
Listen, I don't have to concern myself with Aquinas. That's the point. So let's actually get to the argument.
Bob, that's not my question. My question was.
And my clarifying question to you is why should I care?
Okay. No. My question is this: when you're discussing the attributes of God, is it okay for you to hold to the distinctions that are held by someone like Thomas Aquinas and or Duns Scotus, or does that make no sense to you?
So I'm just going to say that when we speak of God's attributes, the common definition of the word, as to avoid his attributes being non-cognitive, like saying, oh, God has this and is blah, blah, blah. The common definition of the word is the same, but the way that God possesses it is different.
So which scholars of Christianity do you accept as authoritative?
I mean, is this going to be... The scholars that I can agree with are the corpus of the Church Fathers and the canonized saints.
Sure. So someone like Gregory of Nazianzus, someone like Gregory of Nyssa, you would accept as authoritative?
Oh, of course.
Sure.
No.
Beautiful.
No. Okay. You notice how I said I can agree with them, not that I have to. There's a distinction.
No, but is that not the case in Greek Orthodoxy?
Yeah, I can agree with them. Only theological claims at synods or councils which are dogmatized. So, for example, I don't have to say that Cyril is authoritative, but I have to say his letters add emphasis are. You see the distinction?
Yeah, I see the distinction. So,
okay,
I'm making it very clear. Pardon?
Oh, because he wants to pray.
No, this is before we start. It's fine.
How about this? He complained about it. So let's actually have a time discussion.
Sure. No, it's good that I got to the bottom of who he sees as authoritative.
You give me a formal argument of why Christ cannot be God because of my own tradition. Go for it.
Sure.
And I want you, or whoever's timing this, to time the discussion.
Do you accept, before I start, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
On the Cappadocian Fathers, Gregory of Nyssa, Gregory of Nazianzus, and Cyril.
Yeah.
Do you hold on. You accepted that they are figures of authority in terms of your religion, right?
Yeah, in terms of things that I
So when it comes to the Trinity, do you accept them as figures of authority?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Excellent. Let's get started.
Go on then.
No, you start off.
Okay. So premise one, you reject divine simplicity, the concept that God, all of his attributes are going to be identical to himself.
Sure.
Conclusion two, you say that his parts are going to be less than the whole itself. Conclusion one, therefore, your God is composite. Point three, your own tradition of Sunni Islam says that God is the first act. Premise four, therefore, if he is composing himself, therefore the first act is going to be composing himself. Conclusion two, therefore, if you want to say that Allah is the God of natural theology, this would not follow through because you said that this first principle's first act is going to be created, which within the previous premises have been outlined as, for example, him composing himself. The first act is not creating, it is composing, which therefore means we cannot reason Allah through natural theology. You accept natural theology, therefore, of course, then this is just going to be something which either reduces the explanation.
So I'll be honest, I'll need to hear that argument again because I didn't understand it. I'll need to hear that one more time for you because No. If you, I'll give him 30 seconds. Can you say the argument again?
Well, how am I supposed to? I wasn't even finished my argument in 2 minutes. How am I supposed to do it in 30 seconds?
All right, take a minute.
Okay, so take 2 minutes, like we agreed upon.
No, take 1 minute. Take 1 minute. You can speak.
How about
the argument.
this? For the simple child discussing with me here, we go premise by premise in an untimed situation, because I'm not going to have less than 2 minutes to talk in an argument I hadn't even been able to finish. Okay. So you reject divine simplicity, the concept that all of the attributes within God is identical to himself. Premise 2, you say that the attributes of God are less than the whole itself. Conclusion 1, therefore your God is composite. Conclusion 3.
Why does that follow?
Because if he is composed of things that are less than the whole itself, therefore we can pick out things which are going to be really distinct from him, which are less than him,
which
means
go back.
Going to be things that are comprising himself.
No, say that again. Okay. Say it again.
So what we
premise 1, you said that okay.
Divine simplicity.
So hold on.
Now, I want to make this very clear.
Let's get
this discussion is not going to be Mohammed Hijab saying, what is this, define this.
All right.
It's going to be that he literally said in his refutation of divine simplicity that he understood the argument and it's weak. So he knows it, don't be disingenuous and don't play a definition game, because I'm really not here for it, mate. So you know what I'm saying. So don't be disingenuous to yourself.
All right.
Continue.
All right. So he is attempting. Here's the thing. I've heard it very clearly. And I can tell you for a fact, I've been doing philosophy for a very long time. And I'll tell you what, he has not actually put together an argument. Okay. He has put together, hold on. I can tell you that I've heard him twice now, because I wouldn't have said this unless I heard it twice. He said, you believe in such and such, therefore such and such. That's not how a syllogism works at all. That's, by the way, with all due respect, no, that's not how it works. No, it's not. You don't know how to construct a syllogism, okay? You can't say you believe in this, therefore this. Doesn't work like that. It has to be, okay, so you're going to start from a general, go into a specific, hold on. You have done a bad job in creating an argument.
Listen.
Okay, hold on. Let me speak. You spoke.
Is he being timed right now? Is he being timed right now?
Oh, time me.
Time it. Because here's the thing. I don't like when people transition time to untimed discussions.
Sure.
You just want to have the talking.
Sure.
Because you think you're the main man.
Okay, all right. Do you want to press the button? All right, start again, because I haven't started yet. See, divine. No, hold on. Don't get involved. You ran away. Don't get involved. Don't get involved. One at a time. Do you need 2 on 1? Is that how it needs to be? I can't speak to 2 people at a time. I can't speak. It's not physically possible to speak to 2 people at a time. All right. So are you ready? Yeah. Okay. So let's start with the first thing he said, which is the only thing really intelligible that he said, which is that the proposition of divine simplicity indicates that when you say that something is an attribute of God, is saying that that's identical to the essence of God. That is what the Mu'tazilis believed, by the way, and that is what Thomas Aquinas believed. Hold on.
I'm just speaking to myself.
No, don't get involved in my conversation. Yeah, I know you're trying to get rude. Don't get involved. Yeah. So the point is that if that's the case, you have to admit today that God is not love. You know why? Because if God is love, is identical to the essence, God's love is also identical to what? To the law of identity, is also identical to his knowledge. So God's love is God's knowledge, and God's knowledge is God's power. You must admit to this. And if that's the case, you believe in a God without attributes. You are, as many Christians would say, pretty much an atheist, because you believe in a deistic God, a non-personal God, a God that can't love, a God that can't be merciful, a God that can't be powerful, a God that, because these things, these descriptors and attributes, when you say that God's power is identical to his essence, if God's power is identical to his essence and his knowledge is identical to his power, it follows God's power is God's knowledge. It follows God's power is God's love. It follows God's power is God's compassion, and so on and so forth. Therefore, you have to admit today that you don't believe in a God that loves. Go ahead and do it.
Okay, so is that you conceding time? Okay, good. So your argument, okay, so notice how he didn't really respond to the argument and that we're just moving arguments. I thought we would agree to a structure of we point to one argument, then we point to another once the one has either been refuted or conceded to. But let me entertain it, then also go back to the argument at hand. And why is he looking like he's part of Incredibles right now? We'll never know. So, the first point is that anti-reflex identity does not work within the Trinity. Just as much as, for example, when we say the Son is God, we do not therefore say that whenever we're talking of God, we're talking of the Son, just as much as we say Muhammad's job is human, but when we pick out humanity, we're not talking about Muhammad's job. That is anti-reflex identity, my friend, and it does not work in the case of the Trinity. My second point is again going to be that we can be apathetic about these things within a syllogism. We can say that because you do not believe in X, therefore you're going to have the position which entails Y. If you reject that God is not composed of parts, therefore he is composed of parts. Do you see the point here? If you reject a negative, therefore you're going to affirm the positive, that is that God is composed of parts. Now the reason why you believe in this is because the essence of God is going to be comprised of things which are less than God.
Okay, so he didn't answer my question. He has not conceded to the fact that if you say that God's power is identical to his essence and his knowledge is identical to his essence, it follows that his knowledge is identical to his power by the law of identity. That is a logical law. In fact, one of the most foundational, propositional, logical laws. He's talking as if he's making some kind of an argument. He's not making an argument. He has not conceded to the fact that on his view of divine simplicity, he must acknowledge that God does not love. God is not loving. When you say God is loving, you're using that as a descriptive. It's not actually talking about something with ontological status within God. So he has to now acknowledge, before we move forward, he has to tell me, yes, when I say God is love, when Christians say God is love, according to divine simplicity, it's not true that he's actually love in an ontologically real sense. It's just some words we say. So that would mean that according to us, God is really love, and according to you, God is not love. So let's make that clear first, and then we can move on to other things. Please go ahead.
Okay. So I want to demonstrate that supposedly this very foundational principle of identity is just going to pull him into extreme positions. So Hijab, during my time, I want to ask you a question. Hijab, you are human, yes? Hijab, stop filming for your OnlyFans for a minute and answer.
You've got your time, be quiet and speak.
So, Hijab equals human. Human does not equal hijab. I wonder why. Because anti-reflex identity does not work in the case of the Trinity. Just because hijab is human does not whenever I say this individual here is a human, he is therefore hijab. I wonder why. Because identity does not work in this way. I can be identical to the divine essence, for example, whilst also, for example, possessing hypostatic properties. Hijab can be identical to humanity, whilst not everyone who is human be identical to hijab. So can you concede that this concept of identity is not sufficient in all things? Then I can make the argument for why, in the case of the divine essence, it also does not follow. So I want him to at least reiterate what I said, because he did not answer my question when I said that I was going to allow him to speak in my time.
Time's
Can he stop posing for OnlyFans? I'm 16!
Well, I know you're 16. You sound like a 16-year-old.
Hijab and pedophilia. They go hand in hand.
You're the one touching him, boy. You're the one touching him. You keep touching him.
But you want to watch him?
You're touching him. Anyway.
Whatever, hijab.
Anyway, the point is this.
All day.
Okay, thank you very much. Is it my time? Is it my time? Yeah. All right.
A moment ago, he was shaking his chest in front of you.
The point is if you use it with a universal outside of God's essence. So here is the difference: is if I say that animality or horsiness or any kind of universal that exists within, and then I say X is equivalent to Y, and Y, then yes, there could be a difference. But we're not talking about that. We're saying that if God's attribute, yes, is the same as his essence. We're not using a universal here. This is not a genus or a universal that a nominalist can say in his conceptualizing is some kind of thing which is abstract from God. We're saying we're using God to compare him with God. So I'm saying that according to divine simplicity, this is what they say. The divine simplists say that the attribute of God is equivalent to the essence of God. So if it's equivalent to the essence of God, if God's power is God's essence, then and God's knowledge is God's essence, it follows God's power is God's knowledge. It follows and so on and so forth. Which means when Christians say God is love, if they believe in divine simplicity, they are lying to you. That's what it means. It means they don't actually believe in God being love in any real ontological sense. That's it. So can you concede that? Can we move on now?
Because like you haven't really argued for why the argument follows, right? You're just bringing a case of identity, that being anti-reflux identity, then already assuming it applies to the Trinity, by then saying an arbitrary criteria of this identity being in play is that a universal has to be the thing that we're talking about. I again don't have to concede to this, you have to argue for it. You notice how for someone that was picking out my poor debating skills, he already runs from an assumption, from an argument he's already ran away from. He ran away initially from an argument against composition, then ran to my position whilst having an argument that assumes a principle of identity to which I don't agree to. So I want Hijab to argue for why this thing actually follows. You were just being apathetic and saying it's not in the case of a genus, therefore it has to be in the case of a particular, for example, that anti-reflux identity does follow. I wanted to argue this. You just said I can't play on negatives in order to pose a positive, therefore he has to do the exact same thing within his argument. Now again, why does he keep on posing? I want to know. I don't want to talk about pedophilia because that's a moral argument.
Time's up, man. You can talk about pedophilia you like. That's what they do when they lose debates. They have to talk about pedophilia. Okay, let's get started. Look, at the end of the day, I was making it very clear, all right? If you believe by the law of identity that God's power is God's essence and God's knowledge is God's essence, it follows God's power is God's knowledge. This is in a GCSE way for you to understand. I know you're a GCSE student. Trust me, if you are my A-level student, and I know I've got 6 degrees, one of the most qualified men in the world actually. But having said that, no problem. Put that to the side if you think that. Go and ask the University of Oxford, go and ask the University of Birmingham yourself. No problem, no problem. Here's the thing, if I was teaching him in school, I'd give him a C+ for effort. You get a C+ for effort. You get a C+. Yeah, you can. You could be an extra.
I'm an actor.
You could be an extra.
Hollywood, baby.
We can get the hot water in the coffees and stuff like that. But here's the point. Yeah. The point I'm making to you is, if you can't concede this, we could just move on. I didn't say anything about the Trinity. It gets worse if we talk about the Trinity. Way worse. Way worse. But go ahead and tell us that God is not love. Go ahead.
Well, no, because again, okay, listen, okay. He's saying that this principle of identity, which he hasn't even named, by the way, he's just saying this thing of identity that everyone knows about in GCSE level, that he hasn't argued for in the case of the Trinity, follows that therefore he does not possess attributes. Again, what I'm contending is the fact that, yes, I agree that these attributes are identical to God's essence. I do not believe, although, that that God is going to equal his attributes. It's anti-reflux identity. Hijab is human. This guy's human, he's not hijab. That's the point. You have to argue these principles whenever you apply it to a particular thing. You've just been apathetic. It is not in the case of a genus or a universal. We're talking about a particular, therefore it follows. It doesn't. You're just saying in some cases, in this case, it works. Therefore, if it's not this case, it shouldn't work. It's not how you do debating, my friend. It's a false assumption. You want to say you want to move on because you've got poor rhetoric. So far, we've moved to Allah that you believe can be proven of its own merit.
Time's up. Look, now it gets worse because I'm going to put him to bed now, sleep, and maybe he's going to get some sexual thoughts. Sorry to say when I say this because I know he loves pedophilia. But here's what I'm going to say. Be quiet, my friend. Be quiet. You keep talking about pedophilia every time you see me. I don't know what the situation is. I don't know. I'm sure I'm not going to bring my kids here. I'll tell you that for sure. I mean, this guy here keeps talking about pedophilia. But anyway, the point. Let me start my time. The point I'm making to you is now. We've said this and he's tried to defend it and he has no defense. Because the thing is, he's in a dilemma. If he says that these are actual attributes with an ontological status, then he affirms the kind of composition he wishes to deny. If he says they're not, then he actually falls into a kind of collapse of attributes, which leads to not believing in any of the attributes, including God's love, which means you can't, as Christians, say that God is love. Now, Muslims can say it, so I don't know why you haven't admitted it. Number one. Number two is this. It gets even worse when you go into the Trinity. Do you know why? Because if you say that the Father is God, the Son is God, and the Holy Spirit is God, in that sense, if they are all God in distinct personas, as they say, and as Gregory of Nyssa and Gregory of Nazianzus and his Cappadocian authorities say, I don't know how it could be the case. How could it be the case that you believe in 3 in 1 and 1 in 3, but you don't believe in parts of God? It's absolutely ridiculous to postulate that. You don't believe in, you believe in no composition, but you believe in a Trinity. Try and square the circle for me, my friend.
Okay, so again, and he's brought up the essence as it pertains to the substantiations, i.e. the persons. So, Hijab, please answer this question in my time. Hijab,
No.
Are you equal to humanity? Are you a human? Do you want to answer me?
Yes.
Because I can, okay, he's running this argument. The Son is God. God, therefore, is the Son. The Son is not the Father, because then you either lead into composition or you lead to polytheism. Although we reject polytheism, we say there's one God, therefore it leads into composition. But I want to ask him this, and this makes very perfect sense. Hijab is a human. JC is a human. Is JC Mohammed Hijab? No. Because there's a thing called anti-reflux identity, which I've been begging for him, like all the children that he wants to say can marry adults, for him to say that why does this not work in the case of yourself, but works in the case of the Trinity? Please!
Why is that not polytheism?
Is it time? Is it time?
Don't worry, I'll answer.
He's got a bit of time. He's got a bit of
Okay,
time.
again, don't be a
Okay.
coward for Allah and resolve the issue of composition.
Okay.
I want you to answer why you affirm that the first act is Allah, whilst also the first action of Allah is to compose
Kids
himself.
nowadays have very little respect. No problem. Let me put this aside.
Yeah, I know you do.
Oh, shut up, man. It's embarrassing. Look, here's the thing. Yeah, what he's describing, as I mentioned before, I don't think he's been paying attention. He's C grade now, but he can become a B grade if he listens a little bit closer, right? Because
Inshallah.
here's what I'll say to you. Listen to what I'm saying to you. When you're dealing with a particular and a universal, it's different to dealing with two things with supposedly the same ontological value. So if here, for example, if you say that God's attribute is God, we're talking about God's attribute, we're assuming God's attribute has actual ontological status. And then God's essence has actual ontological status. A nominalist or a conceptualist would say that a universal does not have an actual, maybe a conceptualist will, but definitely a nominalist will not say they have an actual ontological status. There are social constructs in many ways. So if you say that this person is a human, this person is a human, it's not the same, because we're talking about here with attributes and essence distinction, both of which are meant to be real in God. So my point to you again, do you concede, considering this response, do you concede that according to your idea of divine simplicity, God is not loving in a real ontological sense? Yes or no?
Wait, okay. So again, so firstly, he's assuming that he's assuming that universals don't really exist.
Okay.
He's assuming that universals do not really exist. I'm just going to say, and to avoid that language has no real meaning, we want to say that universals.
Okay, when I finish with this guy, I'll come to you. Serious issue, I'll come to you in a second.
Very serious issue.
I'll come immediately. Let me just finish with this guy. Yeah.
I'll start talking to him next time. Okay, so the reason why universals have to really exist is because we have to avoid the fact that language therefore becomes meaningless. So for example, when we say that Allah has attributes, we're picking out this normative definition of what it means when we say that Allah is loving, for example. If we want to say that, in fact, this is not a universal, it can be anything mind dependent upon the person. The common definition is what we're going to pick out in the universal of when we're referring to what is love. So why are you assuming that universals do not really exist within your argument? That's my first point. My second point, again, is you're just saying that it does not work in the case of a universal, or it does work in the case of a universal, even though in a particular it doesn't, and you're then just assuming that these universal natures do not really exist.
Okay, so if universals do exist in a platonically real sense that he's talking about, like what Plato believed, that there was a whole place there where the universe exists in a perfect sense, if they do exist in that sense, then his argument falls. Because actually, his argument only makes sense, his response only makes sense if the universal is not real. If you're saying that, for example, Muhammad is a human and you're a human, and so therefore me, I'm not you, if that's what basically he's saying, humanity here is a universal which is not real in that sense. If it is real, then it does become a contradiction. Because if there is such a thing as a personified, manifested humanity or perfect human person, which Plato believed there was some kind of man there standing maybe in the heavens somewhere, Neoplatonic realism, if you believe in that, it actually does fall apart, which means if I'm that guy and you're that guy, how can we both be that guy at the same time? It's a contradiction. The same thing applies with the Trinity, and the same thing applies with your attributes of God on divine simplicity. So you fail. You fail. D- actually, but because you've been a little bit cognizant, I might give you a C+ and pass you, but I'm going to give you one more chance. Do you admit that God is not love, yes or no?
So I've got a question. So let's go back to the analogy of Mohammed is a human. What exactly are we picking out, or what exactly is being invoked when we say Hijab is a human and JC is a human? Of course, there's going to be this common definition that is invoked when we say that these two subjects are the same thing. Just to say that they don't really exist, I don't hold to this Neoplatonic understanding of that there is a perfect can of Coke that really exists somewhere else. I'm just not saying that they have to be conceptual or mind dependent on the person. That's metalinguistic nominalism, which I don't hold to, although you could hold to, therefore meaning that language has no definite meaning. But I want to ask Hijab this. He says they don't exist at all. They don't have any ontological status. Well, that's what you just said on camera, and they'll pick that out. Okay. And again, he wants to answer me when he thinks it's going to better his argument, but when I actually want to ask an honest to God question within my time, he doesn't want to because it will not help him. Now, what is being picked out when we say that Hijab is a human and JC is a human?
Okay, that's my time now, yeah? So, has he got a couple of seconds left?
Whatever.
All right, cool. So here's the point. Here's the thing. I haven't declared my position whether I'm a conceptualist or a nominalist or whatever I am. I'm just basically saying to you that if you believe that, as you've mentioned, that universals do exist, the question would be then, in what context do they exist? In what context do they exist? Is it in a Neoplatonic, real kind of context? If not that context, then what context? In what context does humanity exist with actual ontological significance? So for example, Plato believed that there was a perfect man out there that we, like human beings, would, connect to it. So for example, what differentiates a sword from a knife? According to Plato, there's like an archetype of what a sword is somewhere, an archetype of what a knife is somewhere, and then wherever corresponds with that is a line. Now, if you don't believe in universals like that, if you believe in universals are real, the question in number one is, in what context are they real? And number two, how is it not now a contradiction? If I say, for example, I'm a human which corresponds to something which is real, and he's a human, that actually does cause a contradiction. So once again, it's been refuted, but he doesn't understand it. If I can say one more time you want, I can try and scaffold it for you, I can try and put it in a syllogism, but I don't think you'll understand. This is your last chance. Is God love? Yes or no on your view? Is God love?
Okay, so I'm only going to answer the question if it's not bounded on a framework that I don't have to agree to. So you notice how instead of actually answering my question on his nominalism, he just wants to ask the person which I'm not using these concepts, he is. If he's superimposing these concepts onto me in case of performing a refutation, that therefore necessitates that he's going to have to provide a position on which this argument actually works. I can't suppose divine simplicity when critiquing Allah because I know divine simplicity does not work in the case of Allah. So then I have to ask you a clarifying question in the case of nominalism or universals in order to further our principle of identity in the application of our critique of the Trinity. So then what do you take then to be nominalism, or what is your position on nominalism? Because I would say metalinguistic nominalism, or any form of nominalism rather, is just going to lead to concepts like humanity being meaningless. Because again, I'm asking you this when I said to you that anti-reflex identity does not work in the case of this particular, the Trinity, and this universal humanity, and you're contesting with the universals. So what is being picked out when we say the universal of humanity? If you want to say it's mind-dependent, it has no meaning whatsoever. It's non-cognitive. Humanity could mean pedophilia in the case of Mohammed Hijab, which it probably does.
All right, so just because you said that, you've lost privilege to talk to me.
Okay.
Now you can go back on that. Honestly, don't disrespect, because I know you can do it to your dad, you can disrespect your mum at home, you can disrespect your dad, you can disrespect your Uncle Barry. Don't come and talk about pedophilia and stuff like that. Don't disrespect. No, hold on. He started first. I haven't come to you with anything like that. I haven't disrespected you like that. But hold on. I haven't.
The first thing you said on camera is not.
Yeah, sure. But that's not calling you a paedophile, is it?
That's saying you're
worthless. So now that you are worthless in my eyes, and you're gonna see my back. Know that I've asked him 5-6 times about the love thing. He couldn't answer it once. Go back to your daddy. Maybe he can teach you a couple of manners. Go back to your mum. Maybe she'll give you a little spank. Yeah, and maybe he'll get excited about that. And that's it. Yeah, it doesn't matter. But anyway, we'll see it. You can't answer the question. Christians can't answer the question. The only argument they've got is pedophilia.
No, I gave you an argument.
All right, cool. You can't answer the question. Done now. Go back to your school. Go back to your school.
Go back to your
whatever.
Because you can't defend Allah.
See you later. Goodbye.
You cannot. Okay.
Yeah.
Are the agreed
Oh,
discussions?
hey,
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalam.
This is Mikhail, my son.
Yeah.
This is an issue going on for 8